After moving to New York City by myself, without a job and without a place to live, I figured out how to survive my first 365 days in the city and set myself up for a happy existence. But getting through the challenges of my first year was the hardest thing I've ever done, and it changed me. I'm Hava, and in this video, I'm sharing the top 7 lessons I learned from my first year in New York City. This video is the last one in a mini-series celebrating my first anniversary in New York City. The first 3 videos talk about the story of my first year in New York City. If you have time to watch them right now, I'd recommend starting there, but if you choose to watch this one first, that's okay. I mean, there will be a few spoilers, but the cool thing is when you do go back to watch those other videos, you'll see the lessons I was learning as the events are happening, even though I didn't know I was necessarily learning these things at the time. Either way, the links are in the description below. I took notes, which honestly turned into a word-for-word narrative so that I wouldn't forget any of the details while filming, so they are on my computer and I will be referencing and reading them throughout this video. And again, if you want to know about the details of the situations I reference in this video or what the experiences were really like, make sure to check out the first 3 videos in this series. Now, here are the 7 lessons I learned, and I don't really think I put these in any particular order. 1. Everything is figure-outable. I read a lot. I'm serious. In 2021, I read over 100 books. You can click up here to find out what those books were. And some books, I'm blinded by the light. And some books sit with me longer than others. Marie Forleo wrote a book called Everything is Figure-Outable, and I liked it the first time I read it, but it wasn't until my second time picking it up that it truly started to click and I saw myself living by that motto. A couple great examples of this, though there were others to be sure, are, first of all, I needed a place to stay in New York City while figuring out my job situation, but I couldn't afford to Airbnb it, so I found Trusted House Sitters, which, if you haven't heard me mention it in my other videos, Trusted House Sitters is a platform that connects pet sitters to home and pet owners so that the owners can get affordable pet care while they're out of town, and the pet sitters get a place to stay basically for free, other than the house and pet sitting services they provide, as well as the membership fee that they pay to the platform to find the opportunities in the first place. And based on the cost of the platform and the discount code I found on the internet, I got a 12-month unlimited pet sitting membership for just $96.75, literally under $100. Since I pet sat for 81 nights, that breaks down to a cost of $1.19 a night, plus services to take care of the cats and apartments, like I said, and you really can't beat that. The current cost of a 12-month unlimited membership now starts at $129 per year, including a free background check, which is less than the cost of one night at most hotels here in New York City. This video isn't sponsored by anyone, but I will go ahead and put the link to Trusted House Sitters in the description below. There were a couple times that I needed a place to stay that wasn't pet sitting, so what I did for one night is I did Pod 39, which is a hotel with clean, no-frills, tiny rooms that make staying in a hotel in New York City more accessible, and it cost me $92 for a night. And then I had a 7-night stint in one of the most affordable Airbnbs I could find, and it cost me $533. So with that perspective, you can see why I'm really excited about recommending Trusted House Sitters to anyone and everyone who loves travel and animals. And you can see why I needed to figure this out. There's a big difference between the thousands of dollars I would have needed to afford a sustained stay at these other options than the $96 or $97 I spent on the whole thing. If you're interested in more details about what these experiences were like, you can find the story of my pet sitting in New York City, as well as the Pod Hotel, in part 1 of this video series, and the Airbnb in part 2. Another time I majorly figured it out was during my second apartment hunt. I had to find a new apartment and realized at the time that none of the co-living companies had anything available that met my needs and my budget, so I figured out another way, even though it could be really tricky because of entrepreneurship. And again, if you skip the story just to hear about the lessons, what I'm referencing here is the fact that because I'm self-employed, I don't have traditional proof of income to provide with apartment applications such as pay stubs and offer letters. This makes proving my ability and reliability to pay rent a bit trickier. But obviously, I'm here, so I figured it out. The details of how it all worked out are in part 3 of this video series. There are definitely a lot of other times that I figured out what might seem unfigure-outable, which is a term that completely goes against the lesson I learned, to anyone else, but I think that that's enough to get the point across and prove that this wasn't just a one-time occurrence. I truly adopted the mindset of everything is figure-outable. And I also recognize that these situations are both related to housing, and that's not the only area of my life where I figured things out, but I thought they were the most interesting and most scary-sounding situations. Another major lesson that I learned is that believing in my dreams is part of what makes them come true. At some point in late 2020, I created some vision boards, and I made one specifically related to my dream New York City lifestyle, and it stayed with me through everything. If you watched the videos in this series where I talked all about my story and how much movement and back and forth I did, this vision board stayed with me for all of it. I've always thought of vision boards as a visual inspiration to keep you on track for your goals, but honestly, even though I like the way my vision boards look, because when I make them, I use it as another form of creative expression, I don't actually look at them consciously very often. So imagine my surprise about a month ago when I did stop to truly look at it, and in the bottom left-hand corner, I spotted pictures of an apartment with huge window walls, high ceilings, wood floors, and an in-unit stacked washer dryer. And then realized I now live in a room with huge window walls, high ceilings, wood floors, and an in-unit stacked washer dryer, as well as a dishwasher, which wasn't specifically featured in the photos, but definitely part of that original vision. If you keep up with me on Instagram, you also know that I live somewhere south of Midtown, so the fact that the view in one of the photos faces downtown is really cool. And there's a good view in these photos, and I have a good view in my current apartment. The photos have a set of windows facing New York City buildings, and I have a set of windows facing New York City buildings. The photos have a set of windows facing the water, and I have a set of windows facing the water. Something else about me is that I really like fashion, not at the level that some people keep up with trends, but I love buying brands and clothes that make me feel put together and stylish, even if I'm just casually running to the grocery store. Growing up, people didn't really know this about me because I didn't spend much money on clothes while I was busy saving money for college, and I pretty much lived in hand-me-downs, which sometimes are given away because they're no longer in style. Anyway, even though I'm grateful to be able to buy my own clothes today, I still operate on a budget and rely on the unpredictability of secondhand stores to have what I want in my size and a price I'm willing to pay. I guess in a way that means I still wear things secondhand, but whatever, I'm choosing it myself now. While planning this video, I brought that vision board to my desk to remind me of what I wanted to say about the apartment, and then I noticed another one. This may seem small to you, but hopefully you understand the significance of it after what I just told you about how I built my wardrobe. In a set of photos that represent living in style, one photo features a girl in bean boots, and I just got my first pair of bean boots a few months ago from Buffalo Exchange for about $20, which, in case you're not familiar, these boots go for $140 full price, and these $20 bean boots were like brand stinking new. They didn't have the tags, but that's all they needed to look new. So it's surprising that even Buffalo Exchange had them priced that low. And so now I own them and wear them. This stuff works. So now I'm really excited because now I can look at my vision board and see what's coming. In fact, maybe I need to update it and add some additional dream parts of my New York City lifestyle that I didn't know at the time I made this board. Next lesson. Just when you think it can't get any worse, it might, but hold on tight because at some point it will get better. If you haven't seen the story videos, this is a little spoiler, but hopefully it also makes you really curious about what happened, so you'll go back and watch those videos. I thought it couldn't get any worse than my apartment complex kicking me out, and in case you haven't seen that part of the story, I just want to let you know that I didn't do anything wrong. Everyone was kicked out. The details of this part of the story are in part 2. And then they trapped me and wouldn't let me go to a new place I found, and New York City real estate is really intense, so this whole ordeal was frustrating and emotional roller coaster, and as you know from part 2, expensive. I'm gonna speed past the details because you know them from part 2 of the story. When I got a 2.5 months heads up that my home was being taken from me, I guess some people would have considered throwing in the towel and going back to their hometown at that point. But I never even saw leaving New York City as an option. In fact, it was other people who told me that they might have chosen to leave. The thought had just never even crossed my mind. So I hung on tight as I felt dragged through the mud, but eventually I got to the other side. And thank goodness I did stick it out and keep doing my best in the face of it all, because that's ultimately the reason I'm in this dreamy apartment now. The next lesson I'm gonna share about has been a total game changer for me. Instead of trying to do everything, focus on 1 to 2 goals that begin a domino effect in your life. With a new year ahead, in the last week of December 2021, I took the Epically Aligned course by Catherine Zankina, who is the face of the Business Manifestation Babe. And when I say that I took the course, I don't mean that I just sat down and watched 5 videos. I mean, I did watch the 5 videos, but I also thoroughly filled out every homework PDF template provided, did every suggested exercise, and spent time telling my mom about what I was learning to deepen my understanding. That course is packed with value, but this is the biggest takeaway I had. She walks you through a process to figure out what all your goals are for the next 12 months and then condense it down so you focus on just 1 or 2 that create a ripple effect so the others on your list also happen. I came up with 2 goals to focus on, 1 in the area of health and 1 in the area of wealth. I'll use my health goal as an example. And by the way, I'm not taking you through the process she's laid out to get to this point. There's a lot to it and I'm just jumping to the end of it. After looking at the list of goals I'd written in the area of health, nutrition, sleep, fitness, hydration, stretching, etc., when she asked which of these would create a ripple effect for all the others, I realized that for me, it was exercise. Because in order to have the energy to exercise, I need to make sure I got enough sleep each night. And to have the right fuel in my body, I needed to eat right. Then implementing multiple healthy habits would make me inspired to up the water intake. And it goes on and on. And that's that's exactly what happened. By just focusing on exercise, I've made amazing strides in the other areas of my healthy lifestyle. And if you follow me on Instagram, you know that from my stories. Also, the ripple effect isn't just limited to this one area of life. Supporting my body gives me the energy I need to tackle my work each day at optimum levels. And I'm not saying that every day is perfect. What I'm saying is that when I'm in these rhythms, my efficiency and mood are so much better overall. And being in better moods more often means I have more enjoyable interactions with friends and family, impacting other areas of my life. When I'm feeling chipper, it's no big deal to call a friend while I take a 15-minute walk versus needing to spend that time listening to upbeat music to pull up my mood. Or if I was gonna call anyway, the conversation is a lot more fun and engaging because I'm in a good headspace. Anyway, this is something I'm still very actively learning, but I've experienced enough of the ripple effects already to realize the impact that focusing on just one or two goals, the right goals, can have on my life. And of course, what those goals are will evolve over time. Over the course of the year, I also learned a lesson that sounds like common knowledge, but it's a lot more difficult to internalize and then apply. I can't do everything all at once by myself, and that's okay. When I first headed off to New York City, I thought I would pet sit for 6 weeks, secure a full-time corporate job, and tutor, and do YouTube, and Instagram, and obviously maintain a healthy lifestyle, which means I'd have spent around 56 hours a week sleeping. How did I possibly think that would work with 168 hours per week? I have no idea. Oh, and saying 168 hours per week reminds me of a great book that I read last year about time, perception, and productivity. It's called Off the Clock by Laura Vanderkam, and I'll link it in the description below. If you watched part 1 of my story, you know that's not at all what ended up happening. And during my first 3 months, which are all covered in part 1, I felt like I had such a hard time keeping up. And based on those unrealistic expectations, I wasn't keeping up because I was spread so thin. It's weird because this wasn't the first time in my life that I spread myself too thin, but it was the first time I truly internalized that I would be successful if I wasn't spread so thin, because I was spread too thin to get any traction with anything really. I got that job offer I mentioned towards the end of part 1, and that was the defining moment. I could go work for them, or I could go work for myself. But most likely, I wasn't going to propel into success doing both. At least, not my version of success. This lesson has continued to sink in more over time, and I think it has multiple layers, and while it's something I'm working on still, I find myself embodying it more and more. 6. Be true to yourself. This was a painful lesson to learn because I learned it by not being true to myself. Well, actually, I learned it by trying to be true to myself and not true to myself at the same time. So it was like my arms and legs were being pulled in different directions. And what I mean by that is my plan at the beginning was to get a full-time corporate position and create content for social media on the side. And the thing is, I know a lot of people do that and love it, but that doesn't mean it's the right path for me. I'm a very active, creative, sometimes theatrical person, and I feel happiest when I do things that make me feel alive. And for me, I express myself best through performing and speaking and singing and creating projects, and here we are, getting more and more lively. So I need to create a lifestyle that allows me to do more of that. I remember getting to the end of college and wanting out for a very different reason than everyone else. I love learning, but I was ready to have the time and freedom to learn what I was interested in. I mean, sure, I chose my college major, but that's really a package deal of required coursework if you want to graduate with that degree. Where I'm going with this is that even though I managed to secure an on-camera position in the corporate world, it wasn't truly what I wanted to create content about. On top of all this, I've been a bit spoiled when it comes to freedom because I've had my own private tutoring business for over 10 years. So most of my work experience isn't in an office. So when you put it all together, wanting freedom to choose the focus of my content, performing regularly, working on a project basis, moving toward a more active lifestyle, having an entrepreneurial spirit, it makes a lot of sense that my next step would be starting my own media business. That's being true to myself. The last area of growth I want to talk about is patience. Although this isn't a specific lesson, this was definitely an area where I was forced to grow over the past year. I wouldn't say I'm an impatient person overall. I mean, I'm a great tutor, and impatience and great tutors typically don't coincide. When I'm driving, I rarely experience any kind of road rage, you know, stuff like that. But when it comes to getting things done and reaching my goals, my patience muscles aren't exactly known to be ripped. Over the past year, I desperately just wanted to do my thing. During the first 3 months, I was caught up just figuring out life. Also, I was flying across the country several times. Then I was moving. Then I was commuting across the country a couple more times. Then I had one glorious month of doing my thing. Then I was moving again. And then I had visitors almost every week. My life was basically stop and go traffic. Every time I got started, I had to stop. This mess of a schedule was constantly breaking my routines. And again, like stop and go traffic, It was breaking my momentum. This was such a problem for me, and I was well aware of it, that I sounded like a broken record in my personal life complaining about it. But this patience wasn't all for naught. During many of the forced pauses, I ended up reflecting and contemplating, which resulted in me coming up with smarter plans and ideas for both content strategy and long-term business setup and success. At this point, you're gonna wanna go ahead and watch the story of my first year in New York City, which will make this video make more sense and be more impactful, or head over to Hava's New York, which is my show all about the sights and things to do here in New York City. It's some of the content I've been waiting so patiently to produce. Also, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications. And this was all about the past. Head over and follow me on Instagram to see what's going on in real time. Thank you so much for watching this video and maybe even this entire series. I wanted to create something, albeit long, that captures the memories and essence of this life-changing year for me to be able to look back on and for you to be able to see and get a truer idea of what it was really like. I hope that you feel really in the know now, because although I'd love everyone to watch this series from start to finish, I get that these videos are long and that when someone makes it to the end of one, let alone the end of the series, that's really special. If that's you, let me know by dropping a comment or send me a DM over on Instagram. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!